Welcome to a short screencast presenting how to develop an application that uses NATS WebSockets together with React. My name is Alberto Ricart. I'm a NATS maintainer for the JavaScript client. So here we're actually going to create a React project using the IDE. It is actually going to use the Create React app to initialize it. So we're basically going to run through the wizard. The template will start uh, installing all sorts of libraries and things that are required to enable you to use the development features of React. And so this process takes a little bit long, but that's okay. For our application, we're actually going to create an equivalent of the NATS sub application. So basically, we're going to create a web app that will connect to a WebSocket server, and then it will subscribe to receive messages, and then it will render those messages on the screen. So this installation is almost done. Okay, looks like we're here. So let's actually start by removing a bunch of assets that were generated that we don't need. So we're gonna click them all off and get them out, and that'll have the simplest project that we can have. Now we'll modify the basic app component, eliminate imports that we don't need, and then I actually prepared a set of CSS uh, styles that I'm actually going to use for this application. So I'm basically just going to copy paste over here, and let's take a look at it. It looks like there's something that is not quite right. And what is that? Okay, so it looks like I double copy pasted something. Let me get rid of it. With that done, now we can actually go ahead and we're going to, we continue, actually, I'm going to install the NATS WebSocket library. So npm install NATS WS. And after that is done, there's still some other issue here. Looks like more extra stuff. Let me delete that real quick. Yeah, I copy pasted it twice or something. So, okay. Now, so let's modify the application component. For those of you that are not familiar with React, the index.js is the entry point. See how the app component is the one that is actually rendered, and that's how that is. That's not what this component is. So a couple things about React. The components are usually stateless, and what we're going to do is actually create some variables using a utility that React provides, where we associate a variable and a function that will actually initiate an update on the React side anytime that we update the contents. So the function over there is called useState, and you will see now how we use that. So the other thing that we want to use is something called useEffect. This is actually a function that we use whenever we're initializing or preloading something on the page. For example, when we do a connect, which is what we're going to import here from NATS, we want to execute that inside of the useEffect. So let's import the NATS, the connection, the connect, and the string codec from the NATS library. There's a small issue with the React library in that it doesn't seem to be able to pick the right flavor of the library when you are using the create app. If we simply point to the actual library, it does it correctly. I mean, partly maybe because, we have the CommonJS as well as the ESM module. So here what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go directly into the node modules inside of the library, and then in there find the lib, go to the source, and then go to the mod.js. That is actually the entry point for a CommonJS version of the library, which the React system is going to be happy with. Okay. So with that, let's actually create an utility for converting binary bytes into strings. As you may know, NATS messages have a payload that is just bytes, so we'll need to actually use that to decode whatever payload it is. Now let's actually go ahead and use that use state. I'm going to create a variable for the NATS connection, as well as define the name of the function to do the update as setConnection. The default value for this is going to be undefined, and whenever we create our connection, we'll call the function, and then that'll take care of updating the state on the React application. Similarly, whenever we connect, there could be an error. So what we're going to do is the same thing, register a state for last error that we could actually display, so that in case that the application runs into an error when it's connecting, we can actually show that. The default value for that is just going to be a string, because we're just going to put a string value on it. So now we need to actually define our use effect, and what we're going to do is actually check to see if our NATS connection is actually defined. If it is not, then we're going to go ahead, use our connect, and we're going to set the server's property to be the URL of the NATS server at the port that it's actually running the WebSocket. So that'll be WebSocket 127.0.0.1 on 9090. Let's actually, before we go any back, let's actually go ahead and create a server configuration. We're gonna now enable that and then start a server so that we have it running right where we need it. So the only requirement is to have a WebSocket directive. Let's associate a port. The port is going to be 9090, and because we're not using TLS certificates, we're going to set the not TLS property to true. And now while we're at it, let's actually go ahead and start it, and it started and we're good. Now what we're going to do is handle the success on the connect. So we're going to add a then block, and so here we're going to go ahead and grab, and we're going to call that setConnection function, put in the value that we got, and now let's handle the error condition. So we're going to put a catch, and then see if we get an error here. Also call the setError from here. We got an error when connecting. So just for kicks, we're going to output the error to the console, and then that way we can actually see a stack trace in case we want to investigate further. With that, now we can actually start modifying what our component JSX looks like. We're going to actually apply a style that I predefined on the style sheet, and we can actually now calculate a state for the application. So let's actually define a variable where we're going to put a message that we're going to display. So state equals, do we have a NAT connection? If we do, we're connected. Otherwise, we're going to say that we're not yet connected. And let's do a header element, and let's set the class to be header, and then the value is going to be the state string that we just created. If we got an error, we want to handle that in a similar way. So we're just going to do another header in there, and then conditionally, if last error has a value, we're going to use that value. Otherwise, we're going to do an empty string. We could do it a little bit better, but for expediency, this is great. And now with that, we should be able to actually start the React development server. And as you can see, the browser is actually coming up. It's taking quite a bit of time. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but maybe it's actually the video capture or something is interfering with it. But let's see, I give it a little bit more time. This is very weird. Oh, hey, it came up, and it actually says connected, so it actually made a connection to the server. Yeah, so we got the connected state in there. So let's now with that connection, what we want to do is we want to basically create a subscription. We're going to create a subscription that captures all messages that fly across. And the way that we do that is we specify the greater than wildcard. And we're going to now specify a callback. Callback is actually easy here, even though, we could also do an iterator to process the messages. So we're gonna define the name of a function over here, add message. And what we're gonna do is define that on the outside. Add message is gonna process the incoming messages and it's gonna have the same signature as a message callback on the NATS client. The first argument of the function is a possible error, followed by a message if there's no error. And now what we'll do is just simply print something if we get a message. Let's actually debug at this point and see if we see something. And let's actually display the developer tools, see what we can see. I don't see anything going through yet. Oh, we don't have to do that. We can do it here. Okay. Let's do nats pub hello world. We publish a message, but I'm not seeing anything over there. Oh, there we go. Okay. So reloading it did it. So we're good. They're coming through. So we're seeing it. So now I think what we want to now actually do a state for the application where we're going to collect the messages. So let's actually add a variable called messages and set messages and use state, and the initial state of this guy is going to be an empty array. And all we want to do at this point is collect the messages and store them in a list. The actual messages that we capture, we're going to capture some of the values, and then we're going to pass that to a React component called messages, which will process the entire list. For each message, then the messages component will generate a message, which will render the individual message in a way that we can see it. So let's start by creating messages. And now what we're going to do is create the React component. We don't need that import. We don't need this other import. We don't need the property types. And what we don't actually need those tags, so I'm gonna blank them. And now what we're gonna do is actually iterate over a parameter, a property called messages. And those actually need to be in parentheses. And now we can basically map through those messages and generate the message components of one per message. So for this, we're actually going to return a component, and that component is going to be a message, and we haven't created that guy yet, so it's going to go red. Let's create it now, and we'll do message, and create the template for the component, and get rid of those imports. We don't need them. Gone with that. And now what we'll do is we'll just do a div, but we need to actually get the message data from the component. And now what we can do is we can assign the property message to the message that we actually are getting while we map, right? So let's actually import the message, so that make the IDE happy. And React components, as you know, require a key. That key must be unique, and that's how the DOM reconciliation of the virtual DOM determines if an object is added, modified, or what, and then it tries to do the least amount of work that it can to update the visual representation. So we're going to have to actually pass that key. We're going to have to create some sort of unique key for each of the messages. So here, I guess the easiest way is to basically create a variable called keys, and we'll just make it a counter, start at 0 for every message that we get. We'll increment it, and then what we'll do is destructure the subject and reply from the actual message that we get. Now we're going to capture the string version of the data on the message. So we're going to actually run our string codec utility to decode the message.data, which has our bytes that were delivered with the message. And now we're actually going to put it all together again into a new object that has these new properties that we have. So subject, reply, we're going to put the data, and then it has a key. And then for funsies, we're going to add a time value date now. Nope, that's not quite right. I guess new date. We got to do new date. And to UTC string, yeah. And that'll give us what we want. Now that we have this object, we need to add it to the messages. And a couple things here. So what I want to do on the application is actually show the newer messages at the top of the list rather than at the bottom. And then the other thing that I kind of want to do is limit the number of messages that we keep track of. Otherwise, if we sent a bunch of messages to the application, it would have a very large list that would be very big, and that would slow down the browser. So the thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to shift. This actually inserts a message at the beginning of the array rather than at the end. And now I'm going to slice, and I'm only going to keep the last 10 elements on the list. So from there, I actually have to call the set messages. Remember that the update won't happen until we call that, and then give it the new array that we created. And if we're here, I think we're in good shape. So we can start rendering our messages. And so one thing that we can do is actually see if we have entries on the messages. And if we do, we render them. Otherwise, and actually, let's also add a check for an error. If we have an error, we probably don't want to render anything either. And then what we're going to conditionally do is actually return a component that has our messages. and we're going to set the messages attribute to be equal to the messages array that we are tracking our state in. And otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to, if we have 0 messages, we're going to say no messages. And that'll be the end result of that. Now for messages, I double checking that, yep, we're taking the property as a key, yep. And that should basically iterate and generate our list. We should actually now print something in here so that we can see it doing something. And let's print the message subject. And now what we can do is actually refresh the app, make sure that, see, we have no messages. Oh, it says use effect is not in use. That's not, oh, use state. That's not something that we want. We want use effect, not use state there. And thank you for the good error message there. It says that we're connected. We have no messages. So now we're going to try to publish a message and see if we actually got it all going. And nothing happened, but of course it's a demo, so it's expected. And now the question is, what did we goof up? And okay, they're coming in, they're mapped. And should be something there, but nothing. That looks good. Well, let's see what we did. Where did we goof it up? Where did I goof it up? And no errors. I don't actually have the plugin in there, so that's not helpful. Let's see what we're doing on the set messages or add message. Everything is good. We're listening right where we should be, but of course we're connected. And what did we do? Let's add a wait connect here anyway, so that way if we're not connected, it'll do something. And did that fix it? Nope, nothing. Okay, so if we don't see a message, that's not good, because the whole point of the app is to show a message. So the connection, we subscribe, we'll go add message. What is that message doing? We're going to key, extracting message and save. And then we're going, yeah, and oh, that's what it is. Yeah, we didn't slice. We needed to slice, not unshift there. So, okay, perfect. Now it should be okay if it reloads. We're still not seeing something, but it's not drawing. The no messages went away, so actually I know that it is actually updating the messages. But here it's not happy with this. What did we do wrong? I wanna inspect, nope, I didn't install the plugin, so I can't see the React component. And doesn't matter. Let's actually just try to render the other fields and see if that it's actually mad at something. Let's put the value there. No, that didn't do it. Reload it and see what happens. Nope, nothing. Okay, what did goof up? Interesting. Oh, there it is. Okay, I didn't structure the message property from the props argument. That's what that is. Okay, now we see him. There we go. So we can add another one, and boom, there it is. Okay, perfect. All right. So now what we're going to do is actually add the details of the message, the payload, message data, And now what we're going to do is actually render that timestamp, and that's starting to look okay. And now we should probably add some styles. So class name, and we want to call that message as a style, but we wanted to kind of do a conditional style, I think. I added a style that actually should trigger if the reply is set. So what I'm going to do is conditionally test if the reply field is set, and if so, we're actually gonna further modify it. See, if I publish a request right now, they look all the same, but what I want to do is that by changing the style, I want it to render a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a brace, and I'm going to look to see if the message has a reply, and then if it does, I'm going to return another string, which is going to be request, and that will give it a special style for that. Otherwise, we're not going to do anything. And see how that actually updated it now. On the left side, it has an extra thick green border on the left. So let's send another message, and boom, it is actually doing the right thing. This is actually pretty cool. So I hope that you actually like this video. I know that it was a little bit long for what it is, but it actually showed how to connect and do all these kinds of things. Thank you very much for your time, and see you in the next video. Let me know if there's anything else that you would like to see. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.